Hello and welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Steffanie Rivers. The longer you live, the easier it is to have foresight. A friend of mine calls it being able to see the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie. Once you've seen enough movies, it's easier to predict how they're going to turn out. While most of the news coverage surrounding the shooting death of Micheal Brown in Ferguson, Missouri has focused on the unfortunate ending, a black teenager gunned down by a white police officer, and the local police department's malfeasance in handling everything from withholding information about the case to their tactics against protesters and reporters covering the developing story, I want to focus on what happened before any shots were fired, before a life was lost. Have you ever looked back on a situation and asked yourself, how did I get here? And if you would have, should have, said something differently or behaved differently, or even just shut up and said nothing at all, how that might have changed the outcome of the situation? I do it all the time, because it's not about what's right or wrong, but it's about learning life's lessons. While it's not my intention to blame Brown for the actions of Darren Wilson, the police officer who shot and killed him, because there's no good excuse to shoot someone multiple times when they're not posing an immediate threat, Brown's behavior leading up to the shooting played a role in how things spiraled out of control. Now, before you mentally turn your back on me, ponder this. According to all accounts, the 95% white police force in Ferguson habitually was overzealous in how they kept law and order in the 75% black suburban town. Since their reputation preceded them, that of the police officers, you could predict the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie. Brown should have acted more responsibly during his encounter with Officer Wilson. Wilson and Dorian Johnson, that was Brown's friend who witnessed the entire incident, they both agree that the two of them were walking in the street, and that's what drew the attention of law enforcement. The officer said he didn't know anything about Brown being a robbery suspect, so that had nothing to do with their encounter. Now, I don't know why anyone would choose to walk in the street when there's a perfectly good sidewalk available. And yes, pedestrians can walk in the street if they want to. And yes, pedestrians have the right of way. But if you walk in the street, then you're probably going to disrupt vehicle traffic as they did. And that means you're going to attract the attention of police officers as they did. Now, police were on the scene instructing them to get out of the street and onto the sidewalk. Now, whether they believed that it was their right to walk in the street because they weren't hurting anybody and they were almost at their destination, which is what they told the police officer, that's not the time for you to go into a verbal protest about why you should be walking in the street or what your rights are. That's akin to arguing with a police officer who's pulled you over for a speeding ticket. That's just something you just don't do. Traffic court is when you argue your case. Even if you feel like your rights are being violated, even if you believe not speaking up for yourself in the heat of the moment makes you look like less of a man or less of a woman, there's a time and a place for everything under the sun. People with foresight pick their battles wisely. It's less about who's right or wrong, and it's more about the preservation of life. If you're dead, it doesn't matter if you're right. Although most police officers are assets in their communities, clearly some are liabilities. They're itchy finger lawsuits waiting to happen. And since you never know which kind of officer you're dealing with, it's best to err on the side of caution and do as you're told, listen more than you talk, and live to see another day. On average, 2 black people died every week at the hands of white police officers somewhere in the United States in the 7-year period ending in 2012. That amounts to at least 400 people killed at the hands of police officers each year during that time. These FBI statistics were reported by local law enforcement agencies, so the numbers are probably more. Nobody can be sure if federal, state, or local law enforcement is doing more than just recording the incidents of officers who shoot first and ask questions later, but each of us has a responsibility to have foresight, not to be a statistic, and to preserve the most important life of all, your own. To find out more about the things that I care about, go to the written version of my journal. It's at eurweb.com. Thanks, and have a super day.